Welcome to Vitamin B with Mohana. This is where we help you take control of your well-being. I am pleased to have my guest today, Dr. Chetan Ginigeri. Dr. Chetan heads the Pediatric Global COE at Aster Hospitals. He's doing some incredible work in terms of just transforming society in the space of pediatric health. Childcare is important. However, child safety has become an issue today. Is India struggling to balance between its traditional as well as its modern values of parenting, family setup, and creating a safe space for children?
Because it takes a whole village to bring up a child. Unhappy parents, because of work schedules, are more dangerous, and every 15 minutes a child is seeking medical care for an injury-related problem in the city of Bangalore.
The child is asking me something and I'm like not saying yes or no. They just pounce on me.
It's a struggle, and parenting is not easy. For every child who dies, there are 30 children who suffer serious injuries. Teenage, they are physically very strong, mentally very weak, emotionally very labile.
Parents are snubbing children. So they're just busy on their phones, they're just not paying attention.
Understand the neurobiological and the evolutionary biology behind how children behave. Unintentional injuries are the fourth leading cause of death in children as such.
Child safety issues, what exactly can we take the lens a little closer to it? What are you observing in terms of just issues and problems that are emerging in the space of child safety?
So this whole profile has got stretched and amplified because of the breakdown of the joint family structure. And as parent, you're scanning the area, you instinctively know that my child should not go near that swimming pool, it is not fenced. The child is finding out that his or her parents are emotionally unavailable. The speed of life has really gone up, and that's what has affected these injuries also.
Yeah.
Grandparents have a different set of experience.
Absolutely. Parents at large today are a bit confused because of the East and West.
So it's consistency, it's firmness, it's mindfulness, and it's an intentional parenting that we request parents to do.
Let's understand from Dr. Chetan why this is a brewing issue, what can be done about it, and really as a society, how can we lean in to create a safer space for our children ultimately. So join me in this important and unique conversation with Dr. Chetan. Sit back, relax, and I'll see you at Vitamin B with Mohana. Hi Vitamin B community. We have always been very bullish about your health and your well-being. And I'm super happy today to be launching the very first merchandise which I know will make a difference to each one of us, which is the Vitamin B granola. This granola has been in the making for over 2 years now, with our core team having it on a daily basis. So we felt it was important to spread the awareness and ensure each one of you has the opportunity to taste it and improve your health. Get your first pack, order now, and we are available in Namma Bengaluru, where we have a number of customers who have already promised us and validated that this product is truly nutritious. So check out the comments box where you have an opportunity to place your order in the link provided, or reach us on Instagram DM to get your first bag of Vitamin B granola. I'll see you soon. Stay tuned, be healthy, and be confident.
Welcome to Vitamin B with Mohana, Dr. Chetan. It's my absolute pleasure to have you join me today.
Thank you, Mona, and it's been a great pleasure to be here and to reach out to your audience through this video.
Yeah, how are you feeling today?
I'm fine.
A bit nervous? No,
it's
right?
Yeah.
I think you have a great experience of being on social media, interacting with people almost on a daily basis. I mean, I think daily basis if I need to correct myself. And it must be a fascinating space for you, right?
Yes, it is, and also because of the we are communicating with parents and children at all times, and most of the time they are in distress.
Yeah.
So we are in the listening mode for a lot of time, and we also feel that as doctors, we also need to come out of hospitals to reach out to the public in general, because there are so many interventions that we can do at the community level, which can prevent children and families from coming into the hospital. So that's few things we also work on. and social media is a great medium to reach out.
Yeah. So let's start by the audience understanding what you do. And I really believe it might be best that you explain the space that you're in. I might not do complete justice to it. So tell us in Aster, what are you doing? Aster Hospital, what are you doing?
So I lead a team of almost 100 pediatricians in Aster Bangalore. We are there out of 3 locations, one in Hebbal in North Bangalore, one is in JP Nagar in South Bangalore, and Eastern Bangalore in Aster Whitefield.
Yeah.
So our department primarily focuses on complex care, subspecialty care in pediatrics, which is hinged on a very core and a very capable acute care systems.
Okay.
So what it means is that when children have rare diseases and children have complex diseases, it needs a very good emergency and ICU care, a skilled and a humane approach towards the children and families. Complex care is unpredictable. The outcomes are unpredictable. The money involved is also unpredictable in that sense. So we as a team strongly believe to create an ecosystem where we are able to provide end-to-end care for all specialties of pediatrics, whether it is cancer care, whether it is organ transplant, whether it is pediatric burns, accidents, children with endocrine problems, neurological problems, immunological problems, lung issues and things like that. So these kind of skill set as well as mindsets are not available to many places in the country as such. And I'm honored and privileged to be a part of such a big team.
Yeah.
And also we do a lot of community outreach, because that is one angle we feel with children and families, is that with the changing dynamics of the family structure, of the social cultural structure which are there, a lot of things need to be done at a community level, at a parent level, at a school level, because it takes a whole village to bring up a child. And with the right information and the right intent, we aim to make sure that less and less children come to the hospital.
Yeah.
And a lot of issues are addressed with the right knowledge and right empowerment of these target groups, which is schools, teachers, parents, grandparents, caretakers as well.
Okay. So essentially childcare space,
Yes.
parents interacting with children, that's really the space. But essentially it's pediatric support, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is pediatric. So from newborns to 18 years of age.
Newborns to 18 years.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really, waiting for our conversation to happen. Because when we first spoke, Dr. Chetan, I was a little taken aback. Like, you have a perception that things are different today. You have your own experiences of seeing new parents and how hyper they get with regards to how they take care of their children. They're so specific, they're so particular. And I can't remember my parents being like that with me. So something has definitely changed. And many times, to be very honest, it's also unpleasant to be with certain parents recently in the last few years. They expect others to behave exactly the way they want their child to have an experience with different people. So something has definitely changed, right? So how and what, in your view, can I put it like, how do you want to call parenting today? How can we even define parenting today?
So I would say it is an extremely distracted and a confused generation of parenting. As a generation, we would call it a cusp generation, wherein we watched the old India, which was very socialist, and then we saw the kind of opening of the economy as such. All of us really studied hard because that was one way to, actuate a class change, get more progressive in our whole approach towards education,
Yeah.
go abroad for jobs, go abroad for education, having come back and seeing the economic prosperity which is happening in the country. We are part of that initial set of people who are kind of are swimming in this economic prosperity that India is going towards.
Yeah.
And the offshoot of that is that apart from learning skill sets and knowledge which has come about from the Western world, we are also trying to experiment with their styles of social cultural integration, the parenting styles, which we feel maybe there is a different view to how we were brought up, what the modern scientific approach, so-called scientific approach towards parenting. And all this has kind of left us a little confused. And what I would say is that we are witness to both the Eastern and Western philosophies of parenting as such, and we are trying both approaches. We have not said we have reached a sweet spot.
Yeah.
It's a struggle, and parenting is not easy. And generally, what I tell parents is that parenting is such a long journey, a marathon. The result of which you will know only when your kid is 40 years old,
Yeah.
how he turns out to be. Not at 5 years, not at 6 years. So I think we also need to give ourselves a little bit space and credit for what we are trying to do with all the other dynamics which have changed.
Yeah. And
Definitely.
it's a lot of expectations in the world as well.
Yes.
So essentially, can we say that parents at large today are a bit confused because of the East and West values that are actually, or styles of parenting which are actually quite different, right? Societies in the West are more individualistic driven. You still do not see kids living with their parents for longer. Here it's such a different setup, right? And the children also are very different. I must say, it's not just the parents; the children themselves are living a little more in a Western way. That's also adding to the factor, you think?
Yes, because the schooling system also has kind of kept up with modern times, and we have adopted certain Western influences as well. So, as parenting generation, our lived experience is not what the children expect from us. There's a huge technological overarching presence in our homes. What children are learning in schools are very different from what subjects and the approach to subjects that we learned. There is more emphasis on learning by doing, more experiential learning that they are exposed to. We are trying to keep up with their pace as such. And because they are born into the technological society, they are very comfortable with it. We are still learning the ropes. And that's where I think the friction is there among the current day parents and the current day children also. And because information is so freely available to everyone,
Yeah.
the contrarian view which the child puts across on a family dining table cannot be matched with our lived experience. And children, that's why reject it many times. And that's where I think it's very important for us as parents to accept it, be mindful about it, and approach it not as a task to be done,
Yeah.
but a privilege to, to care for another human being and see him blossom into a fine gentleman or a lady.
Is that not happening with that attitude? Because we had another podcast where this psychologist was saying that parents truly think that children are like properties, right? Like they own the child. They're not a partner, like you beautifully said, right? You're there to care and love and nurture a person. But actually, typically in an Indian setup, I think, is that how you think it's?
Yeah, I think that's you put it nicely, that they are thinking of children as a property, which they will have to look after to some extent and mold them and project their anxieties and wishes onto the child, which maybe we went through as children with our parents, and having outgrown that phase, when we are faced with a similar situation, we are trying to do the same thing. So like, the great philosopher Rumi told that children really don't belong to us. They belong to the world. They come through us, and we have the responsibility of giving to the world the best version of our children that we can. And they are different personalities. They are wired differently. They are growing up in a different society. The influences what they have is completely different. And we just need to be mindful. We cannot expect children to change and mold themselves according to what we wish them to.
Yeah. And there was another beautiful thing that I read, that children are a reflection of our ego. So when you are expecting on a daily basis to actually tell the child, you have to do this, you have to do that, you must do it. And typically they are, at least our generation, our parents never bothered to explain things to us. Maybe they didn't know also, right? It is clearly a reflection of your own ego that you're expecting the child to do what you need and not what they need. So it's a completely different, a thought process that is evolving. And children they know now. They know better than what we knew at that particular age that they were in.
But there's also a kind of conflict there, because we grew up with parents who said, do it because I say so. And today's parents are hijacked by children who say, do as I say, or allow me to do what I say. So we have shifted from a very authoritarian parenting to a very permissive parenting. And we have not been able to strike the balance between creating safe perimeters in which children can explore themselves safely, and we should not expose them to the ills of the society and just listen to what they have to say and believe what they have to say, thinking that, my child knows best. So generally in parenting discussions and with parents, then we say that, don't make the child the center of your universe. That, the child is kind of, modulating the overall family dynamics by themselves. It is a very important aspect of spouses to be very strong partners with each other, and child is a small part of their family world.
Yeah.
They are not the center of the world. And the moment those boundaries are drawn with clarity, it's a good start for us to balance the discipline that we want the child to kind of live with, and also give them the freedom to explore and empower them to kind of experience new things.
So in between all of this, these really valid points, how is the role of nuclear family versus joint family setup playing out in today's modern world?
So again, the systems are changing. Modern day parents want independence, want privacy, but they are struggling with childcare because childcare is now getting outsourced to maids, to other agencies like preschools, creches, because working parents are there. And sometimes the other dangerous trend of our digital devices becoming unpaid babysitters. So even though there is a lot of freedom in nuclear families, there is a very less interconnectedness. People are extremely busy with their work, and we understand that, and technology has made it so easy for us to bring back work home. And respond to calls, respond to emails, sit with the system all the time. These boundaries are not known to children as such. So they feel that parents are not paying that much attention to them. And during the first 7-8 years where the mirror neurons are extremely strong in children, children learn by imitation, they learn by absorbing and observing the vibes that the parents give out. And it is such an important aspect for us to be responsive during that period of growth.
Yeah.
For the child to become a very well-rounded, emotionally well-regulated individual, rather than, seeking validation and pleasure in digital devices and the virtual world as such. So it's just like we are living in glass houses where we allow the rest of the world to view what's happening in our lives, but interconnectedness is significantly reduced. And that's the bane of nuclear families as such. And children also are not getting the benefit of intergenerational experience, Grandparents have a different set of experience.
Absolutely.
Our horizontal families, wherein extended families of uncles, aunts, cousins, have a very different lived experience. So having said that, when children are living in this kind of a bubble, they feel that is their world. And what problems they're going through, it's only their problem. Nobody else in the world is facing such a critical issue. And they internalize it and they project it in very different ways, including behavioral issues. So as more and more people kind of go out, make friends, talk to each other, and they realize that, everybody is in the same boat.
That you're living in a nuclear family
Yeah.
setup with lots of gadgets around you, and that's the background scenario to everything that we're going to talk about, right? So when you say that, so are we saying that more and more people are living in nuclear families, evidently?
Yes. So they are living in nuclear families. Now I think one generation has done that mistake, but then childcare becomes such a challenging aspect that we seek help from our parents, grandparents, and extended family to come and look after our children. But still the problem is real, and that interconnectedness is lacking, and by the time children grow up to teenagers and parents have not been there in the formative years of their journey, the gap is too wide for them to bridge, and then that's where breakdowns happen.
I still remember, Dr. Chetak, most of my younger days, till a long, long time. I was very lucky to have my grandparents till my late 30s, actually. So that's a wonderful thing because they had children early.
Yeah.
That was a natural thing then, I guess. But we used to hang out with them.
Yes.
We hung out with them. We cooked with them. We really, there were days when my friends would make fun. Oh God, you're again with your grandparents. We really enjoyed growing up with them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you have a difficult situation, I wonder where I get the strength to handle it, see it objectively. And I have come to realize that it's all the values that we were taught when we were younger, by different stories, different examples in their own life, right? That you got to learn from, that they were so strong.
Yeah.
And I think somewhere that people tell me a lot of kids, they don't hang out with their grandparents, they don't get those opportunities, but it's a very sad situation to miss
It's
out.
uncool, kind of. It's uncool for the children because they don't realize the perspective of life which they get from grandparents and parents and the extended families. And also, what has also changed is availability of different role models in today's life. So there is a whole new celebrity and influencers who are role models for these youngsters and children as such. We also had them, but we had them on our room walls and not talking to us all the time and interacting with us. But this generation is in live conversation with those role models, and that's why they feel that the older generation is uncool. The parenting generation is very imposing, and it's we are the cool generation, and it's that's our right and our time. So
Yeah. And we're not basically saying everything is wrong. We're just trying to sort of connect it to the issues at hand, right?
Sure.
We want to be fair because then.
no, absolutely, absolutely. No, there are huge advantages to technology. It has brought about people together. I mean, imagine us reaching out to our school friends, college friends, and all these things have happened. But yes, there is a flip side, which if we are handling it well,
Yeah.
I think we can get the best of both worlds.
So, Doctor, coming closer to your space, right? Why is it important that we look at child care more carefully? From what conversation we have had, there are emerging issues.
Mm.
So, what are those emerging issues that we may think is not that important right now from a child care concept at large in India?
So we are kind of from a developing country. We are kind of now moving towards a developed nation. The disease profiles have significantly changed. From my experience being an ICU doctor and a pediatrician for the last 20-25 years or so, we have won pretty much over issues of infectious diseases, hygiene issues. We are facing a problem of abundance. So the future diseases which are going to kind of affect children significantly are the lifestyle diseases. So obesity, we call it malnutrition. That is the nutrition which they get in our malls and fast foods and this.
Not
Not
malnutrition, it's malnutrition.
It's malnutrition.
I've never heard that. Oh gosh.
So they are consuming way too much of processed food, high salt, high sugar, high saturated fats, which is bringing about these lifestyle diseases much earlier in life. Teenagers and 20s and 30s, we see and hear so many of these unfortunate things happening. So that is one non-communicable diseases which is going to be a big burden. Second is a burden of unintentional injuries, which is also my special interest because of the distracted parenting that has come about. Children being very curious and fearless. That's not a very great combination when you put safety lens through that. They are going to do what they're going to do. And for a child who is exploring his immediate surroundings, the moment he wants to attempt something new, you will notice that he'll turn back and look at the mother for the response.
Right.
And if mom is busy with the screen or on WhatsApp, he will go ahead and do it. And that's why the kind of unintentional injuries that we deal with, whether it is falling from high-rise buildings to accidents in the puja room or bathrooms or our kitchens, are significantly higher. So today, unintentional injuries are the fourth leading cause of death in children as such. So that needs to be addressed by active supervision. That is what our grandparents used to do, or somebody used to eyeball the children in their formative years, especially the toddler age group, when they are like little scientists. And also passive supervision, using technology and baby-proofing your homes in such a way that even when you're sitting in this room and and the kids are playing somewhere else, you are reassured that they are not in great danger as such.
Mm.
The third aspect is the mental health. And that's something has come about with awareness. I don't know whether we are overplaying this mental health issue so significantly. Is it our lack of resilience with respect to our own relationships, our humanness as such, whether that's playing out in different ways? Have we become softer as a generation of humans? But mental health is an issue as such. So right from childhood as such. So our OPD practice, suppose if you were seeing around, say, 10 children in a day, earlier it used to be 8 children with infectious diseases, 1 or 2 children with lifestyle diseases as such. But now it's almost 50 to 60% of dysfunctional bowels, poor eatings, and behavioral issues either in school or at home. So that's something which is really changing fast.
So, on one hand, if I'm understanding, we're getting stronger physically.
Mm.
We are able to deal with infections around us because the nation has also changed, right? We know our medical systems have gotten a little better.
I would not agree that we are getting stronger. We have kind of have better scientific evidence and the technological advancements to treat major diseases.
Yeah.
And also maintain our health and hygiene to some extent.
Mm.
But the food industry and the entertainment and the social media which has come about, or the technology industry, has an overarching presence in our day-to-day life.
Yeah. And that's what is causing different type of issues now.
Yes.
So we
Absolutely.
have a threefold problem, right? And just to, talk about the last topic just for a few minutes. When you talk to psychologists and counselors, they are very vehement that actually we're not soft.
Mm.
Talking about our concerns, our traumas is actually making us stronger. But then my question back was always that what are you talking about? Is everything an issue? Are we not resilient anymore? Just because somebody said 2-3 words, are we not able to deal with that strongly? So then how are we going to combat life, right? Because life is one trauma to the other trauma, right? So these are different aspects, but maybe this generation is, by lifestyle, they have a counselor.
Yeah.
By lifestyle, they are checking their gender. It's a very different trend that's going on right now with the younger population. Okay. Yeah. So that's a completely different conversation for another day, I suppose. But really coming to child safety, and I'm very curious about this a lot more. Child safety issues, what exactly can we take the lens a little closer to it? What are you observing in terms of just issues and problems that are emerging in the space of child safety? What kind of cases is that happening?
Yeah. So when we talk about child safety, there are two groups. One is intentional injuries, which is mainly child sexual abuse, physical abuse, and neglect and things like that. And the unintentional injuries, which happen in our homes, in our schools, in our roads, and things like that. So that's my field of work generally. And the data points are really scary. I mean, in the world, almost every single minute, one normal child loses its life for a freak accident. Okay, and that's really scary.
And that's unintentional.
Unintentional injury. This child is playing one moment and then he suddenly falls into a water body and drowns. Or he gets electrocuted by putting his hand into a plug point and things like that. So these injuries are significantly gone up. And and in India also the data points are quite scary. We work with WHO Collaboration Center for Injury Surveillance based out of NIMHANS, Bangalore. And every 15 minutes, a child is seeking medical care for an injury-related problem in the city of Bangalore.
Every
15 minutes. And this is the data which they have done, collected from all hospitals and trauma centers in Bangalore. And every day in the city of Bangalore, one child loses its life for a freak accident or injury-related issues.
Okay.
The other issue is that for every child who dies, there are 30 children who suffer serious injuries and 70 children who have a near miss. Okay.
Wow.
And that's the quantum of problem. And imagine the financial, emotional burden of looking after those 30 children who suffer serious injuries. The economic burden of looking after these children during the acute phase and during the rehabilitation, sometimes lifelong, is budgeted to be more than the healthcare budget of the country. It's around 5% of the country's GDP. And that's a huge number, yes.
That's a very huge number.
That's a very huge number. So we are kind of not really paying attention to the exploratory nature of the children which is there. So there are certain physical, mental and behavioral aspects in children which puts them at risk for injuries. Like a small baby who is an infant has got a very large head, and he will occupy the head will occupy 1/3 to 1/4 of the total length of the child. So when he is leaning forward from a balcony or a dining table, he will topple and fall. And because of his high center of gravity, the head will hit the ground first. So children are top heavy and topple. Then they mouth everything because all their fine senses are in the mouth, because that's what reflexively feeding enables. So children, if they want to sense anything, they will put it in the mouth. if they want to sense the taste, texture of the things. So this mouthing habit puts them at risk because anything other than food goes in. The parents will say food never goes inside, but if it's a button battery pin, insect crawling, it just goes into the mouth. And they mouth it. And then they have very weak legs, they can't wriggle out of the egg. So that's in the first 1 year of life. After that is once they gain mobility. Now imagine many newborns in the animal kingdom gain mobility the moment they are born. Humans, it takes 9 months to 12 months. Nature has been kind to us that, a mother and the family needs to know the child needs to know the mother, and then they gain the mobility as. So imagine the baby is delivered in labor room and they start walking away. And that's really not how nature is designed it. So once they gain mobility, the risks really multiply because now they're exploring their immediate environment. They are like a blank canvas. Everything gets imprinted onto them. They are like little scientists. They are fearless. They're curious. They go about every other corner of the house, and they have 10 times more energy than adults. So you have tired parents. You have distracted parents. You have a highly energetic child who is exploring everything, and in unsafe homes as such. So accidents happen. So that's in the toddler age group as such.
As 0 to 2, 0 to 3?
No. So 0 to 1 is the infant period, and then from 1 year till around 4 to 5 years, as such is the toddler age group where accidents are maximum.
Yeah.
And then they move out of the homes. By this time, parents have figured out how to keep their home protected, but then they start spending home in outside home. So they have to navigate the lifts, they have to navigate the traffic, they have to navigate on-road vehicles and school environment per se. And that's when a lot of outdoor accidents happens, playgrounds, parks and things like that. The moment they reach teenage, they are physically very strong, mentally very weak, emotionally very labile. So there is a high tendency to risk take, to show off. And that puts them at a different kind of risk.
Right.
So driving, taking a car out for a drive. But problem is that also puts innocent bystanders at risk. And
I think so many of that.
so many of them, yeah. So an old gentleman who is going for his morning walk gets run over by a teenager who has got a supercar or a super bike with him is really, really kind of unfortunate. So this whole profile has got stretched and amplified because of the breakdown of the joint family structure. Because of nuclear families who are busy and bringing work home, because the baby care is partly outsourced to maids, to play schools, as such, and because we as parents, when we seek out information, we also need to seek out from the right sources and understand the neurobiological and the evolutionary biology behind how children behave and why they are the way they are. And once that knowledge gets, parents get it, it's not necessary to learn everything by experience, good or bad. So it's also good to prepare, for this kind of eventualities. Learn first aid, learn, CPR, and we are very happy to train parents and teachers in schools who are, in this space wanting to learn because, Louis Pasteur used to say, I admire you for what you are today. This is about children. They are so naive, they are so innocent. And I respect you for what you will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So each child who is under our care is born with so much of potential to be whatever they want to be.
Yeah.
And to nip it in the bud just because of an adult carelessness is just not done. I think it's unfortunate and we need to take responsibility for that.
So that was really beautifully articulated, right? And so essentially every phase till about 18 to 21, broadly, right, speaking, this issue of child safety continues. Till you're truly an adult and then you know how to manage yourself, right? And we haven't even touched upon, what is happening in India with alcohol and drugs, which is now, I can't believe the age at which people are starting, right? So it's really, really disheartening. But keeping that aside for a moment, when you look at all of these, unfortunate accidental injuries, and unintentional injuries, what are the causes? Let's get deeper into the causes, right? And the pattern of parents. Do you see that there are certain things that parents are also doing, specifically, and getting into the details of it, that is actually, causing all of these issues to happen as well?
So as I told, parenting is difficult to manage the energy level and to keep the child under your vision. It's very, very difficult at that age.
Yeah.
So the kind of pattern of injuries what we are seeing is a combination of what children are exploring and what parents are allowing them to explore. So for example, a 2-year-old, imagine his worldview. It's everything exciting is happening on a platform. The mother is cutting vegetables on a platform. Papa is operating a laptop on a platform. They are writing on a platform. So everything exciting is happening on the platform. And a 2-year-old does not know what's happening on the platform. So he has a tendency to grab and pull. And by mistake, if he have left something, hot item, sharp item, heavy items, if he pulls it onto himself, he's going to hurt himself. Because children's skin is almost 30% thinner than adult skin. It cuts easily, bruises easily, burns easily.
Sure.
Now also imagine a 3-year-old watching an egg turn into an omelette. That's magic for him. I mean, a puri fluffing in hot oil. That's magic for him. And as a parenting generation, we would like children to watch this by sitting next to a gas stove and things like that. And that's where the unsafe behavior comes in. So the child will watch twice, thrice, then he will attempt it. We see so many scalding injuries coming from kitchen
Wow.
just because, parent had to pick up a phone or to answer a doorbell, and then the child has done something like this. Okay.
So it's literally the base thing.
It's very, very basic. It's
That's
very
really
basic
thing.
awareness. It's very basic awareness.
People don't have it. Parents don't.
They have it, but then they're not exercising it. So when we talk to mothers, we tell that nature has kind of put that DNA into it for you have that sixth sense. You know what is not, appropriate for your child. When you go to a mall or a nature resort, and as parent, you're scanning the area, you instinctively know that my child should not go near that swimming pool, it is not fenced, or near those bushes where it looks very dense and
Yeah.
maybe, there are wildlife or snakes and scorpions there. You instinctively know, but we blunt it by consuming social media or getting distracted completely as such. That's why I say it's a very distracted parenting generation.
Yeah. Are they snubbing children, with phones? Because in another episode, right, it's so nice to meet different people bringing in so much of reason to the whole thing. A neurologist had come and she said, it's called fubbing, which means phone snubbing.
Mhm.
Parents are snubbing children. So they're just busy on their phones. They're just not paying attention. Is that also contributing factor?
It is a very contributing factor, both in their physical worlds and also their mental emotional worlds. Because children learn language, learn identifying themselves and also emotionally regulating themselves by making eye contact with the parents.
Yeah.
So there is a huge area of what we call it as mirror neurons. So the whole mirror neurons is so important for the social, cultural, behavioral aspect of the child's growth. And when parents deny the child that face time, that eye contact, that time and pause, that, I am with you, I am listening to you actively. And as you said, if the snubbing happens because parents have to answer a phone call or type out a message or whatever it is, the child is finding out that his or her parents are emotionally unavailable. And that really sits very deep in the child's subconscious. So the child may have attachment issues later on in life or issues with emotional regulation, that the only way he can seek validation and seek attention of the parents is by shouting out or by doing something unnatural. So that leads on to a cycle of behavioral issues that the model of.
And so that it's, coming across in a very balanced way, Dr. Chetan. This is something that has to be pretty extreme for that level of psychological damage, right? Because I have seen parents where if you're not answering the child immediately, the child is asking me something and I'm not saying yes or no, they just pounce on him. And they say, hey, why are you not answering to my child? I'm out of 10 times, once I missed it or twice I missed it, right? So somewhere the child also needs to grow up to understand that sometimes people are not available for you also, right?
But to expect a child to do that is very, very difficult. So what we tell parents is that, if you're really busy, we understand. The child will also understand. Give children the credit where it is due. They are much more mature than what you think they are. they are acting out. Why? Because in the time where they assume that you are with them, you are not giving undivided attention. Okay, a simple example. The separation anxiety is at its peak at 2 years of age. A lot of working mothers, when they come home to a very violent child or a very clingy, cranky, crying child. The whole day the child would have been okay. But the moment he sees the mother, the whole dynamics changes.
Yeah.
And so what we advise mothers is that when you sit down in the car, parking your car, listen to your favorite song, get into a different zone now. And if possible, before you come in front of the child, freshen up, just do everything so that once you're coming in front of the child, you give the child that 2 or 3 hours of undivided attention. Don't go open the door, hug the child, and then say, I have to make tea for the family, or I have to rush to the washroom, or I have to catch up with some work.
Yeah.
The child perceives it as some form of an abandonment.
Okay.
And that really sits deeply with the child as such.
Yeah.
So there are ways and means to mitigate that. It's just to understand what the child's growth is going through, what his mindset is, and how he is developing. And these developmental milestones are very important for parents to understand.
Yeah.
So once they do that, I think they get comfortable with how to deal with it.
Got it. Okay. So you do a lot of work with parents. Your community reach out model is very interesting. How are you collaborating with parents to help them navigate through these situations further?
So what we do we use platforms of schools to reach out to parents. What we can share with them in that 30 minutes, 1 hour workshops is basically these broad strokes of how to understand why the child behaves the way the child behaves. Why at 1 year of child wakes up in the night screaming, howling because his high mental functions are developing. He's going to see a lot of dreams and nightmares. Okay. Why this attachment anxiety is at its peak in 2 years? Why does the child throw tantrums? What is the cry for help behind that action? And once we are able to scientifically tell them that this is what are the growth milestones, the children are going to be high on emotions. They will be unable to regulate their emotions for very long. And we as parents have to mirror and teach them how to regulate their emotions. Once they are mindful of that, then slowly the shift happens in their own households. And it's very important also to emphasize the partnerships which members of the family play. Because children are extremely manipulative to find the weakest link in the family and get what they want. Whether it's a grandparents dynamics, whether it's parents dynamics, or mates dynamics, or even neighbors dynamics.
Yeah.
They know which buttons to push.
Yeah.
So it's consistency, it's firmness, it's mindfulness, and it's an intentional parenting that we request parents to do.
Okay. And so basically you're doing a lot of outreach in terms of using schools, and through schools you mean the parents of the children. And educating them. So educating people, creating awareness of, what could go wrong, right, essentially. So what techniques do you teach them to avoid, unintentional injuries?
So techniques for unintentional injuries is basically to fine tune their sixth sense, to exercise their passive supervision inside the homes. And this is where I feel we go area by area as such. We just ask them to make a checklist and teach them which areas are dangerous and for what reasons.
Okay.
So like in kitchen, as I told you the examples before, simple things like, if you have a long handle vessel, turn the vessel towards the wall. So the child does not, grab and
I
pull.
can't believe we're having this conversation, right? Because it's so basic.
Yeah, it is so.
But I guess, this is the thing. Let's take a step back, right? Earlier, I remember, if you're just in a natural surrounding and someone's child comes, I'm an aunt, I will make sure that I turn.
Yes.
So what happens with parents on a day-to-day basis? Is there that much pressure that they're not able to sort of slow down to do these basic things for their children?
Yes. The speed of life has really gone up, and that's what has affected these injuries also. They are not being mindful and intentional about what they are doing as such. So if somebody leaves a knife on the edge of the table, that's a high risk.
Yeah.
But even in my own practice, I have seen 3 parents run over their own children while reversing their vehicles. because they just did not notice that the child was playing behind with toys. They just got into the car and reversed it. So simple method like go around the car once before you get in can solve this problem. You know, do not leave a child unattended in the bathroom till 8 years of age. If suppose you're giving, first take everything that you need for the bath of the child with you. And if suppose the doorbell rings or you have to answer a phone, you do not leave the child alone. You wrap the child, bring the child out, and then answer the phone call or the doorbell. So these are few things.
Yeah.
Again, as I told, this was very hardwired in our maternal instincts and as a caretaker instinct. But somewhere it is the distractions of the modern life, which these simple measures also are being forgotten.
I think other aspects of our life are very demanding. Like you don't know anymore if your job is there.
Absolutely.
You are having an affair.
Yeah.
Your money, everything is like very expensive. So there's money pressure. Now there's fitness rage. Like everything has become, every aspect of life is not simple anymore. It's become too demanding. So having a child now, as we both know, many parents are not interested many people are not interested in having children. They're being very frank about it, saying, because once you have a child, there's no returning the child, right? So it's become very demanding, doctor. I mean, it's hard to see that that's contributing to, these mishaps, right?
It is very demanding, and again, let's empathize with the parents as well. Children are not easy to bring up. It's a full-time job, and as I told, there are no immediate results as well. But it has to be, the framework has to change. That's what I tell parents, that the framework of parenting has to change from a very task-oriented parenting, and we have to do it because we have to do it, from thinking of it like a joy and a privilege of bringing up another human being who has got his own thoughts, who has got his own way of dealing with the world, and he may not reciprocate your way of doing things. And if we kind of shift that frame from challenge to joy, a lot of shift happens. You have to really see happy children. It's such a joy to be with children. They're so natural. They're so full of energy. They're so full of joy. And what they bring on the table is something which, whenever parents say that, whenever couples say that we have decided against having children, my heart sinks, because they are missing an opportunity of lifetime to hold another human being with that kind of closeness and that responsibility, that care, that love. It really connects you to yourself at many levels. Without being judgmental, that there is a beauty to parenting which has not been pushed too much, and that's also the other facet of it. I think we need to romanticize parenting a little bit. The whole idea of caring for a child and also in the process discovering ourselves. So we became good pediatricians only when we became parents. Before that, we used to give technical gyan to all the parents, but we realized that what challenge it is to bring up children.
Yeah. No, I cannot empathize anymore. It's a reality that there is no time. There's a lot of pressure, and those are leading to unfortunate situations. I want to go back to a point that you had made earlier. You said that parents used to expect that it's my way or the highway, but today children are expecting it's their way or the highway. Why was that? Why is that happening? What is going on there?
So children have options now, and they have information now. And that whole philosophy from, say, authoritative or a collective bringing up a child now has given way to a more individualistic approach towards parenting and towards childhood per se. So parents are telling children at a much younger age that you matter, that your voice matters, that you can voice out when you are not agreeing with something, which is good in many ways. But children are perceiving it as that I am the boss. And then what happens is that gets reinforced in schools with peer groups and with influencers and celebrities, where individuality is pushed to such an extreme that they feel that no world has to pander to my needs and my wishes. So that's something which has come about so strongly, and we need to kind of shift the dial back to towards a good individual but who is also a responsible connector.
Can you share one or two examples of how children are making this a reality?
See, we had a very unfortunate case of a 14-year-old girl who got access to the dark web and had a kind of a digital parents on that dark web with a sibling as such, who encouraged her to self-harm and commit suicide and leave this world to enter into that virtual world. And the child has attempted suicide 3 times, saying that my living parents on this planet Earth do not deserve me, and my virtual parents are the ones whom I'm in more alignment with, and let me go there. And
It's that extreme.
it's that extreme. It is that extreme. So, and because parents really are not able to gauge, especially in the teenage period where they want their own rooms, they want their own devices, they want their own privacy, what's exactly happening in their lives. The schools are not able to give that information. The children are exploring their worlds in an unsafe environment, getting their information from unknown sources or dangerous sources who have their own agenda,
Yeah.
and parents are completely oblivious to it till something happens.
Sure.
And so this has really kind of shocked us also as doctors, and that is also the reason why we feel that unless we set the foundation of parenting right at the early period, teenage is too late for us to deal with. Then you're entering into the realm of clinical medicine as such.
So, I have so many questions because these are like quite shocking. Is this recent?
Yes,
This is a
maybe the
recent
last-
trend, right? Yeah.
I think post-COVID has amplified it significantly, because the access to digital devices became very easy
Yeah.
and acceptable.
Mm.
It was used for educational purposes, school purposes, but then the wandering happened away from that as well.
So in teenage, this is an unintentional injury as well, right? It
Yeah.
could be classified like in that manner.
Yeah, I would say. So digital safety and online safety is something also we touch upon a lot in today's day and times. Cyberbullying, sharing
Yeah.
your financial informations, grooming online, which happens as such. But again, I would not say I'm an expert in all that, but we have experts who deal with this on day-to-day basis as such.
But this is the reality that
Yes.
is happening.
Yeah.
These are extreme injuries where even death can come under it, right? So, what is that one, if you were to say that it is a very core habit or practice parents need to sort of enable themselves with, practice a day, what would that be?
Slow down when a child rushes to you. Be mindful as a parent. Every small action that you do or every small word that you speak to a child matters for the child. And that is the imprint responsibility we have as parents. Do not neglect that responsibility too much. There are ways and means to do that. Even if you're so busy, find out at least 45 minutes of your time to snuggle onto the bed with your child, to just tell a story every day. That ritual itself is so enriching for both the child and the dad or the mom that it leaves a lasting impression. Unhappy parents, because of work schedules, are more dangerous than happy parents with busy schedules who find out time to interact with their children. Give them enough face time. FaceTime in the sense and intentional listening, not really bothering about what my boss is asking me to do, and then trying to listen to a child who has so many things to say. Okay, and he's speaking fast. You see so many behavioral issues because children want to communicate more. They realize and they see the parent's face and realize that I don't have much time. You know, and that's where the anxiety starts.
Yeah.
And a rushed household also leads on to rushed children. And that's why the relationships break down. The moment there is an emotional confrontation happening in a child's life, they back away. They feel that they need to run away from this situation and handle it in isolation. So social isolation is significantly high with all the kind of social media that surrounds us.
Very interesting. And is there a lot of resistance, because you're collaborating with a lot of parents, you're trying to create awareness. Are they resisting or are they basically having a lot of resistance to accept that they've made certain errors which could have led to, child safety issues?
There's outright denial and there is a definitive pushback when we discuss these things, because somewhere they also know that it's a reflection on their parenting. And I think we are also partly responsible for that, because whether consciously or unconsciously, we do judge parents sometimes when these injuries happen. And, we see this drama on a daily basis in our emergencies. The child falls from balcony, a mother is so worried, father rushes from work, blames the mother. So there's only one child to look after, anything moves out. Then there are grandparents involved. So there is so much of blame game that's happening. Nobody is ready to give each other space and time as such. And as doctors also, maybe sometimes we unconsciously project our judgment onto them. And that's where I think we need to grow up. As a generation of doctors, as a generation of pediatricians, teachers, adults. So anybody who is involved in care of a child also needs to partner in a way of a more loving, consistent and firm communication with each other, so that the child learns its boundaries and is not able to manipulate the situation.
And they're not seeing that everyone's blaming each other,
Yes.
right, for that particular incident as well. So it's been shocking, yet it's been a very eye-opening, realistic conversation that we've had on a brewing problem. Would you consider this to be an emerging problem in India?
It is brewing and it is going to surface very soon. Mental health issues in youngsters and children are going to really get amplified. One maladjusted generation of parents are going to lead on to 3 or 4 generations of maladjusted children. By the time we course correct, it's going to be too late. So we really need to kind of sit down and think through what we are doing, find avenues to do that, and find ways and means to do that with our busy schedules, because that's the reality. The jobs are a reality, the stress are a reality.
Never go away.
It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
So the parenting challenges are going to be a significant reality. With that whole ecosystem, how to recreate it in a very inclusive way and not take the burden on oneself. And mothers undergo a cycle of guilt that is so deep and so long lasting that we need to kind of tell them that it's not only your responsibility, it's the whole community's responsibility. It's a system's failure if your child is not come up in a very well-adjusted way.
Yeah.
We need to understand that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So I want to sort of bring our conversation to the last part, where I'm still curious, because I know a lot of people who say that the Western way is the way. And then there are a whole lot of people who say, no, what my parents and my grandparents did actually makes sense. They were very strict with us, but that's really helped me today. So where is this balance, and how do we deal with it? West versus the East? How is it affecting parenting styles? What should we do about all this confusion, right?
So this is where I think we need to go back to the evolutionary biology and the neurobiology of the child. No child before, say, 19th or 20th century has slept alone in a room and self-soothed himself to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
This was propagated by American psychologists and a pediatrician in 1920s, because women were entering the manufacturing sector into the workforce. And they wanted the women to be fresh in the morning for work. And they told that, co-sleeping with children may be harmful. So you need to leave them in different rooms until they cry, and beyond a certain point only you need to go and check in. So this agenda-driven parenting styles were brought about by Western cultures, propagated by intellectualizing it too much, giving it a flavor of modern science, and completely forgetting how nature was designed.
Yeah.
There are many things which tradition has kind of given us the benefits. However, sadly, it has not got communicated in that way.
Yeah. Across the board.
Across the board.
Been told to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Across the board. So we still, my personal view on this is that we go back to our old style of parenting, which is Eastern, which is grandparent-led, which is community-led, which is joint family-led, where everyone knows about the child, how he's going, what are his developmental milestones, what his likes, dislikes are, and the child also learns from an extended family, has an intergenerational connect. So I'm a big fan of the Eastern way of parenting, which I feel is more wholesome, rather than so-called scientific psychological parenting styles, which seems very impersonal, which is a task oriented, which is bullet point oriented. I am not for that. At least Indians, we have such a legacy of storytelling, of our mythology, of the wisdom which was imparted through the generations.
Yeah.
We need to rediscover that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I think I've also heard people talk, certain counselors say that parents come, tell a counselor, have you read this book? Have you read that book? Have you read this book? But then when the counselor turns around and says, okay, but you want American children. You want your children to be like American children. No, I want Indian children.
Yeah.
So there is this huge confusion
Yeah.
from the foods to everything, right? So any last advice that you have, doctor, that people who are listening can actually take away from all the amazing work that you're doing?
So let's first take responsibilities as a generation. That we are responsible for what the future generations are going to be like.
Yeah.
My request to parents is basically seek out the information from the right people, from the right sources. Use the wisdom of grandparents and elders in the family for everything in life, not only parenting as such. Give the benefit of the grandparenting to the child because they have the patience to listen to the child. They have the patience to answer the child's 100th question, which is the same as the first question. The repetition and what happens with the child, the whys and the no's which the child goes through that phase. Grandparents have definitely much more patience and perspective to handle that. Utilize that as such. When you are believing the written word in Google as such, put a framework of how your childhood was. And also put a framework of whether it feels right to you at a deeper level. And instinctively you will know what is right for your child. And go with that instinct. You will never be wrong.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. I loved, for me, the biggest takeaway, which I think not only from this space that we've talked about, but in general is to slow down and sharpen our sixth sense.
Yeah.
Because our intuition is also telling us what decisions. It's helping us decide a lot of other things, right?
Yeah.
So it's been very enriching. I know it's been a very difficult, deep topic. So I have a lot of respect and thank you for doing everything that you're doing for people. And hopefully we keep emerging and evolving to be a better society as well.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you for this opportunity.
Most welcome. It was our pleasure. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.